Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Inside Furman Athletics, our monthly podcast, video cast with Athletic Director Jason Donnelly. I'm Dan Scott, the voice of the Paladins, and Jason pulled out the big guns this week. We have the commissioner, the new commissioner of the Southern Conference, Michael Cross, with us here in studio today. How are you, gentlemen?
Dan, great to be here. Thank you. Jason, thanks for having me.
And Michael, thank you very much for being here. This is a special ask that we were able to get, and we're going to get into everything that Michael's been doing today. It's been a very busy day. But for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, this is something that we do on a monthly basis with our host, the voice of the Paladins, entering his 20th year in Division I. Is that what it is, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Love it.
It's like dog years, by the way.
Just recently, right?
Yeah.
But Dan is in his 20th year as the voice of the Paladins, and we do this on a monthly basis. And what we try to do is we try to bring guests that are engaged with Furman Athletics, and in this case, we've got our brand new commissioner, which we're excited to have. But it's also a chance for you to ask the athletic director questions and submit those things along the way. But we're gonna dive right in because we've got a great day today. But tell everyone about your day today, because this is an interesting thing, and tell them about what today was and where you are in your journey in terms of it's just starting off with the Southern Conference.
So I am in the process. I'm in my first 60 days in the role, and I am in the process of visiting all 10 SoCon campuses to get an understanding of the strengths, the challenges, what the facilities are like, what do the campuses look like. And everybody's got unique opportunities to recruit athletes to be successful. Their institutional stories are all different. So best way to do that is get on campus, build relationships, have those conversations. And today's been fantastic. We've gone, we're probably about nine plus hours in on the day. And it's been a soup to nuts conversation. We've had a chance to talk with athletes. We've had a chance to talk with coaches. We've talked with senior staff, met with the president, met with the athletic director, obviously. I've given institutions guidance to say, here's a couple people I think are really key to talk to. And then beyond that, it's really your opportunity to say, here's who we think gives you the best opportunity to understand what we're about. And so today's been fantastic, beautiful campus, beautiful environment. Hasn't been too hot, which has been good. And it's been amazing hospitality. So thank you.
And as we are recording this, you are wrapping up here at Furman your third campus visit in the league this week.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Third this week. Saw Citadel earlier this week, Samford earlier this week. And I'm actually 9 of 10 schools in. So I gave my calendar and said, pick whatever day works best for you. Today was the best day for Furman, and we're doing it. And I'll finish the visits up next week with a visit at Mercer on Monday.
Yeah, and we're grateful for the time and everything you're doing. And I think it's a wonderful way to get to know all the key constituents. And when you send out the notes, so we want to find a day that obviously your president, athletic director, SWA will be there, but also want to get a hold of your coaches, your student athletes, your executive staff. What are some things that you've learned about Furman today that maybe coming in you didn't know, or just some impressions when you think about where Furman Athletics is as a whole?
So, the instant impression is, I think if you're going to have a successful athletic environment, one of the things I think is really crucial is attention to detail. And as I walk around campus, as I see the facilities, as I talk to people, the attention to detail about the way things look, the way you talk about yourselves as an institution, the values that you have, the culture that you've created top to bottom, those things are very evident. And I would assume they translate really well to conversations with prospective student athletes and their families. But those things are very real. I think it's unfortunately become a little cliche to talk about culture, talk about values, talk about the way you do things. But those are things that all of the institutions in the SoCon have talked about very consistently, and clearly it's being represented here. So when you talk to coaches who have success, when you talk to coaches who are winning championships, it's not accidental. There's things that they do that make those things happen. And I've had, a nice time talking with people today and learning what the secret sauce is at Furman about how to be a successful Paladin. So,
it may be cliche, but something becomes a cliche because there's usually some truth behind it. Mm-hmm. And all of those things that you just mentioned are things that Jason talks about here all the time, the culture, the values, all of those things that are right in our wheelhouse of what it takes to be not just successful as an athletic department, but successful as human beings, basically.
And that's the business that we're all in. Mm-hmm. We're in the business of educating young men and women and making sure that they're prepared for life after their time on our campuses. And it's obvious here that that's taken seriously and that people care about it, that the academics matter, that the educational experience matter, that the leadership opportunities matter. I mean, all those things are very real, very palatable, tangible as you think about what's going on here. And it's been great to see.
And Dan and I had a chance to debrief a little bit about you coming on and some of the questions. And what we find from a month-to-month basis, there's a lot of questions about the Southern Conference, which we can get through. But I think just a starting point for you when you're looking at this opportunity, Commissioner, overseeing this conference, what were some things about the Southern Conference that were attractive to you when you thought about making this your next step?
Sure. So I've mentioned one of them already. I mean, I think anytime you want to have an opportunity to be successful, it starts with what our core is, which is the academic piece. And strong academics, institutions that care, get it in terms of what the educational experience is supposed to be. So that's a very meaningful piece, and I think that's where you start. From there, I think there's other strengths. I've talked quite a bit in this situation and in other places. The leadership is really strong. The leadership at the presidential level is strong. The leadership from the athletic directors is strong. The coaching leadership is strong. Mm-hmm. And in an environment where people spend a lot of time talking about, NIL and finances and all these types of things, that is not the only way to ultimately reach success. You need a meaningful amount of resources, but we're in an environment where we're not going to spend our way to success and trying out the SEC, or some of those types of environments. So that's been very meaningful. The geography of the conference is a strength for sure. In an environment where you've got manifest destiny as, with conferences from coast to coast and others trying to figure out how do I get in a East Coast conference and I'm on the West Coast. The way people have tortured their geography, the strength of this conference is clearly one of them is the geographic environment. And, look, you don't get to be a 100-plus year organization without having some idea what you're doing. And so the length of time that this conference has been in existence, all of those suggest there's opportunities to come in, make observations with fresh eyes, take an experience. I don't have a lot of conference experience, but take 25-plus years on campuses and apply that in a conference environment and compete and help our institutions compete is really going to be, I think, hopefully a differentiator as we go forward at some point.
Well, you referenced the landscape and what the Power Fives are going through with NIL and realignment and all of the changes that are happening there. And of course, we're all waiting to see ultimately where everything lands and then what the trickle-down effect is for schools at the mid-major levels. So where do you see this league's long-term viability? It's got that 100-plus year history, a foundation, but what about moving forward?
So in my mind, it starts with doubling down on your strengths. Okay, there was a quick story. If you go back, one of the years Tiger Woods was at the top of his game, he was like 86th on the tour in sand saves. And Tiger Woods didn't make the decision to go improve his sand game. He made sure he didn't hit the ball in the sand. So he didn't have to worry about it. I think the same thing applies here. The geography, the academic quality, the investments that people are making facility-wise, in coaching, in excellence in their sports, emphasizing the educational components. All of those things are starting points from my perspective. And, my goal is to make sure that the way we present the conference to the public and to other institutions is such that people on a regular basis are calling and going, hey, we'd really like to be in the Southern Conference. How do we make that happen? Yep. And you want to be in a situation where you're dealing with membership, where you're expanding because of opportunity and not out of necessity. And right now, there are opportunities out there that we've got to think about, but you don't want to go grab somebody just for the sake of grabbing somebody. And so I'm not fixated on a number, but that's that'll be something that continues to get talked about because of all the moving parts in the college athletics landscape.
Yeah, it was interesting. Just the last podcast that Dan and I did together, one of the questions was about, what is the viability of the conference? What does it look like? Where are we at? And one of the strengths that we have is that the membership recently doubled down on staying together. This was something that geographically, history, tradition, regionality, affordability, competitive-wise, decided. And I think for you coming into this is a great opportunity because you really have a chance to already begin to paint your brush, see what you want it to be. But in a short amount of time, I've really enjoyed spending time with you. You've already had a chance to make some adjustments and some things, and some are larger than others. But just as you've gotten off the first 60 days, what are some of the areas that you've already begun to put your imprint on the conference and figure out what you want to do?
So, great question. Appreciate you asking it. So, I've got a whole host of things, some of which hopefully the public is aware of. So, for example, we have introduced a new logo. We refreshed the logo. It hadn't been redone in, I think, 25 years. And, the logo that we had previously, which we're calling the historic logo, was one that was put in place when social media didn't exist, when I'm not sure the internet existed, or if it did, it was in its infant stages. So there's been so many evolutions in technology, so many evolutions in television, so many evolutions in the way people consume their information. So refreshing our brand was a key piece of that equation for sure. I think there's opportunities as it relates to revenue generation, particularly in corporate sponsorship. We've made some decisions to bring those experiences in-house and start generating corporate sales and corporate opportunities, particularly around basketball, some of the things we're doing on a social media perspective, with somebody that we've brought in-house and taking it out of the hands of an external provider who would be providing good services but may not be as intimately familiar with the environment and the landscape and where we are. So those are two things. Coming into the season this year, with the start of football, we focused on this concept of SoCon Saturdays and making sure that people, as Saturday arrives, just like Taco Tuesday, Saturday arrives, let's get ourselves thinking about SoCon Saturdays and going out and supporting our football programs, supporting our soccer teams, our volleyball teams, whatever they might be. So, we'll work on that in the fall, and then we'll see what it looks like in the winter and the spring.
Yeah, and some of the things that go unseen that I appreciate as an athletic director, our president appreciates is the touches that you've made in terms of points of connection you've made with the CEOs, point of connections you've made with the ADs, and also just diving into the weeds, getting into scheduling, getting into analytics, getting into communications, getting into marketing, all these different things. So in a short amount of time, you've been off and running. And ironically, I don't even think you were on the job when you first started working, because you were just at it, at the spring meetings. You weren't official till later in the summer. So I hope you had some time off in the summer that you had a chance to even enjoy some of it as well.
Well, I started the day after the announcement came out that I had the job. I was at your meetings and Hilton Head, and it was great because you got to meet everybody, number one. Number two, you got to hear a lot of discussion about what was on people's minds and start figuring out where we need to go, what do we need to do. But I did get a vacation. I spent a week in Minnesota on a lake up there. Good. It was a little different heat situation than what I've experienced here, and I'm spent a lot of time. Grew up in Buffalo, New York, so that'll give you some context about my love of warmth. It's coming around pretty quickly, though. I've enjoyed it. It's been great.
Well, Dan, I got a question for you, because this will put you on the spot. If there's one question that a Furman fan would want to ask the commissioner, and all questions would be on the table, what would that question be that a Furman fan would want to know from the commissioner?
What are you going to do to get this league a second NCAA tournament bid?
Wow.
Oh, geez.
You went right at it.
Well,
you asked.
I thought he was going to ask about officiating. So.
No, well,
we're safe.
You're the commissioner. You could actually find me on the spot if I complained about officiating.
There's complaining and asking. Those are two different things.
No, but that's a question that comes up a lot, and actually we talked about it earlier today.
Yeah.
With fans, that's the one that I hear more, other than officiating. That's the one I hear more. This league is good enough to be a multi-bid league, and it never has been. How do you fix that? Can you fix that?
Yeah. So I've thought about this issue a lot. I'm a basketball guy. I played college. It's the sport that I've dialed into and spent a lot of time around. I've done a lot of research and thinking about the net, the RPI. I'm a data person. I love the movie Moneyball. I love the book Moneyball. There's aspects of those types of thinking that I think apply here. I have avoided, and I think I will continue to avoid, talking about a second bid. I think it unnecessarily narrows our world. But I think in terms of units, okay, and units comes in one of two ways in terms of the economics that come from success in the basketball tournament. One is getting a second team in the tournament. The second is having your team, if it's only one or both of your teams, if more than one make it, be seated at a place that allows you to have an opportunity to win. It's very, very hard statistically to be a 15 or a 16 or even a 14 and think that you're going to have an opportunity to advance. And everybody loves those stories, but it's sort of like putting a couple bucks on green on the roulette table. Like, it doesn't come up very often. When it does, you're glad. But it's not a consistent approach to the world. So I don't want to give away all of the things that I have talked about with the athletic directors and with the basketball coaches, other than to say a lot of conversations about scheduling, a lot of conversations about the economics of the sport. You know, when you think about what's happening in college basketball right now, the reality is it's being influenced by football. And what I mean by that is the FBS institutions are making more and more money than they ever have. They have figured out, as have we, and we have to figure out our counter to their actions. But they've figured out how to navigate the net, which games they should play and which they shouldn't. And we have to have a very institution-specific scheduling strategy as it relates to our non-conference basketball schedule in order to figure that piece out. So, like I said, I don't want to give any trade secrets away since this is going to float out on the air. I know I've got colleagues in other places that I'm sure are thinking about this issue as well. But I prefer to think in terms of units, not get a second team.
Yeah, and to give you context, that's exactly what we were talking about this morning. You know, we had a chance to debrief about a number of things, and you're on the right track. You know, there's a lot of different things that are out there and ideas, and I think that's certainly something that's one of the things, not the only thing. And then I think one of the opportunities you had today, the meeting right before this, you had time with our head basketball coach, Bob Ritchie.
I did.
Which is always an energetic conversation. But just some thoughts in terms of meeting with Bob and some takeaways when you're thinking about the basketball side of things from a coaching perspective.
So the amount of data and information that was shared in the course of our hour conversation that was organic, and he didn't have to pull it up on a computer that he just knew cold. Very impressive. Very impressive. Like that, when I talk about Moneyball, I talk about that movie, that book. That's the reality of where we are today. I mean, at the end of the day, look, making shots matter. You want to win basketball games, just make shots. Everything else solves itself. But making shots and what do you do to make that happen? What are the packages that you can start using from an analytics perspective that will help you figure those things out? What is the information you can gather to help you navigate the transfer portal and say, hey, how do I work with player A versus player B? Do I need to be nervous that so-and-so is leaving? It was a wide-ranging discussion.
Yeah.
Wide-ranging discussion. Were it not for this interview, we'd still be talking. So, I would welcome that. That's great. I love talking with smart people who are thinking in really creative, nuanced ways about how do they win and be successful.
When we were setting this up, Dan, I had said to Michael yesterday, I said, we'll get. Would you want to do it in the front of the day or the back of the day? So let's do it at the end of the day. So, well, you have Bob last. You could be there all night. And I said, you two, once you get going with the passion that both of you have, and we're grateful for your time. Dan, I also want to jump on football too, because you had a chance to you kind of open up your work here with the conference at Football Media Day, and you had some great remarks about where everything's are headed. But I think also a thing that our fan base would be interested in is the FCS seeding process, the bid process, the playoff process, and understanding the background. What we want to do with SoCon Saturdays, the end game is to try to get as many Southern Conference teams into the playoffs.
And a little known stat. We've had FCS Division I AA, whatever it's been called, since 1982. The Southern Conference has never had someone sit at the head of the selection committee, ever.
So that's a goal.
That's a statistic I was not aware of.
Well, you are now aware of it.
All right.
But
well,
just some thoughts on
fix it
on football.
Fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the selection committee process is really interesting. I've been on two NCAA committees. I was on the hockey committee and I was on the baseball committee. And I've been in the rooms, I've been in those conversations where, particularly in baseball, which is very similar to the basketball process, you get down to 7 teams for 2 spots, 5 teams for 2 spots, whatever it might be, 2 teams for 1 spot. Those are hard decisions, and what you want to be able to do is know that you've had people who have done their homework and have figured out, here's the team that's most deserving. Like at the end of the day, you're making a decision about the dreams of 100 athletes on one side of the field and 100 athletes on the other side of the field, and you'd love to have them both be able to go. Who really should go? And look, I've got a bias. I think I'd love to see 4, 5, 6 SoCon teams go. But there's things that we can and should do to make sure that we're positioning ourselves to be in the best light possible. Obviously, you got to win some games. You got to have your top teams win games. But again, there's data, there's analytics, there's information, and understanding the comparisons that are going to be made in that room, making sure that our representative is well armed to go in and provide that information is crucial. When I talked at Media Day, one of the things I said there, and I think it's true, is FCS football in the SoCon is our conference's best opportunity to win a national championship. The institutions aren't competing against the FBS on a weekly basis. Obviously, we play some of those games, but that's our best chance to win a national championship. And clearly, with the ranking of Furman, clearly with the ranking of some of our other teams in the conference, there's an opportunity to do that. You got to be good. I think you need a little luck. You got to avoid injuries.
Yep.
There's all kinds of wacky things that happen, in an imperfect world. But it's about the process. It's about making sure you're in a position to have that opportunity. And there's a lot of things that our coaches are doing, the way they're thinking about the game, that I know is going to make a difference. Our SoCon Saturdays approach is really, again, from a fan perspective, to make sure that fans understand, hey, Saturday's here. Like, go watch the football. It's great football. Like, it's high quality. It's accessible. Those all make a difference. They help our teams win at home. They help our teams win on the road when you travel on the road. So those are meaningful. And hopefully people will come out. I'll be here on the 2nd to watch you guys play Tennessee Tech. Look forward to it.
It's actually a week from today, the 31st, and we open up.
Oh gosh!
If you come on the 2nd, you can watch the replay.
That's right. Yeah,
So
it is on the 31st. Oh my gosh! Thank you.
This broadcast will go out after that date, but we have adjusted. And I know Thursday nights for some is not as easy as Saturdays, but part of the adjustment for a Thursday night game is Clay getting some more time from game 1 to game 2 is part of his strategy that he likes. The second part of it is that the students have really come out and said they really wanted to have night games and opportunities, and this was a great chance to open up the season. Last year's crowd, we called it FU After Dark, was a huge crowd, great crowd, and was driven by a lot of student interest, so it's been a really good thing. And the third benefit is that it's Labor Day weekend. You're not competing with everything else that's going on around that weekend in terms of attendance and games and football season. So you will be here 1 week from today.
I will.
Thursday night. We're excited to have you. But, Dan, last question.
Yeah, you'll have a better grasp on this after you've been through a complete athletic cycle, but in your first 60 days, what have you seen that you believe this league does well? What does it need to improve on?
So, the league, in terms of what it does well, I think it has a really fantastic understanding of who we are, what we stand for, and how we will individually be successful. A lot of people have talked about, and what do we need to do better? A lot of people have talked about, hey, how do you bring together, 4 public institutions, 4 private institutions, 2 military institutions, and what's the common thread that runs through a 10-team conference that has good values on the academic side, is competitive in a lot of ways, and has great geography. Like, those are nice building blocks, but that's not the solution, and that's not the answer. So, getting tighter on our narrative, making sure that the communications that we put out from our office, this isn't really an institutional thing, this is our office, but we spend a lot of time talking about, are we trying to be factual or are we trying to be promotional? Are we trying to talk about ourselves in a very sterile, here's what the records are, and there's aspects of what we do that I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that would kind of fit to a little bit of the marketing work that we were doing before you arrived, and what we're trying to do is that there's something solid and stable and wonderful about the Southern Conference, but at the same time, we've talked about moving from the minivan, and wanted to be in a little bit more of a sports car, wanted to be a little bit more aggressive with our marketing and our branding. And I think there's a feeling here that this is a really strong conference. It's got great teams, great history, tradition, geography, academics, great cities that it's a part of. But one of the things that our athletic directors and our president's really excited about you being a part of this is taking this. We've got to get to the next century of our existence. Like the 100 years of the past have been wonderful, but we got to need to move on to the next century of who we are, and the brand opportunities that come with that, where the league could be positioned athletically, academically, and also as everything shakes out around us, where does the Southern Conference fit into this, and how are we relevant in that national space with our identity? But this is a lot of the reasons that you're sharing is what we're excited about and where we want to go.
Well, I'm excited to take it on. I can't wait.
And incidentally, before we wrap up, the second fan question that I would have asked, you kind of referenced a moment ago. I don't know if mismatching is the right phrase, but the matching of private schools, public schools, military academies in this conference, and the viability of finding the way to keep all of that working from a competitive balance.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think sometimes people can overthink that issue. I'll put it in a slightly different context, which is, you get these occasions where people talk about schools being football schools and basketball schools. I don't think if you went to any of those institutions that have those labels and you talk to the coach of the sport that wasn't, that institution or that sport, where they'd go, oh yeah, we're not trying in football, or we're not trying in basketball. Like, people, those are built around coaches, around people, around, individual opportunities. Maybe there's some facility things that flow in there, but I generally think if you can be successful in a sport, you can probably figure out a way to be successful in other sports too, given the right resources, the right investment, et cetera. So back to your point, I don't think when Furman plays against ETSU, that your coach is on the sideline going, oh man, they're a public school, what should I do with this? But figuring out, how do we make judicious decisions around our resources? Figuring out, do we want to, I've talked about floors and ceilings. Do we want to have a floor and say nobody can go below this standard? And in some cases, in some decisions we might make, that probably makes a lot of sense. On the other side of the equation, do we want to have ceilings? Do we want to say, hey, nobody can do more than this, in ways that are reflective of institutional values, in ways that are reflective of areas where there's unity around a particular topic? Those are all really meaningful discussions that the CEOs have been very clear they want leadership in those areas, and we'll figure out, we're going to give people some choices and some feedback based on all of these visits I've taken, synthesize it together and put it in front of them for digestion, and we'll go from there.
We are grateful for your time. Thank you so much for coming on. One of the things we talk about, this is just a great opportunity for our fan base to get to know you. And we look forward to hosting you at games in the future. We look forward to your leadership with the Southern Conference. We're excited, Furman, for an exciting year ahead for all of our sports, but we're grateful for you and your team. And thank you for joining Dan and I today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for the chance to talk, and thanks for the chance to be on your campus all day. It's been fantastic.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That has been a very, very intriguing conversation with the new commissioner, the 10th commissioner in the history, 100-plus year history. So that means you've got about a 10-year window ahead of you, right? if I do the math correctly. 10th Commissioner of Southern Conference, Michael Cross.
That'd be lovely.
There we go. We will see you again next time with another edition of Inside Furman Athletics. For the Commissioner and Athletic Director, Jason Donnelly, I'm Dan Scott, as always, saying God bless you and so long, everybody.